In the following video, I will be presenting my working environment for the individual coursework. One of the main issues international students face between each academic year is the need a place to store their items over the summer. This can pile up to be a lot of items, as they may have a printer, chair, wardrobe, shelves, books, sheets, all of which of course cannot go back home with them. So unless you have a Mary Poppins bag, you need to find a place to store these items safely. Currently there are three main solutions. Students either store their belongings with family or friends, continue to pay rent over the summer, or turn to big storage companies. There are, however, disadvantages with each one of these solutions. The first solution isn't for everyone, as not every student has family or friends that are willing to take their belongings over the summer. With the second solution, this is a very expensive choice, as rent, particularly in London, is extremely expensive. Most students turn to the third solution. This solution has many advantages, and for most students it works perfectly well. However, the main disadvantage is that all storage companies have strict regulations that you have to follow. It can sometimes be very stressful and inconvenient to have to meet certain specifications, such as limited box sizes. We therefore wanted to provide an alternative, more informal way for people to store their belongings over the summer. We are essentially creating an Airbnb for storage. When you sign up, you can either choose to be a renter or a property owner. As a property owner, you can post storage spaces, and as a renter, you can choose to rent the storage space. I will be describing how a storage space post looks like since I will be writing the class for this. A typical post will contain the name and surname of the property owner that posted the space, his profile picture, the title of the space in a short description, the measurements, width by height by length, the postcode, the weekly price of the storage space, any extras like if the house is locked or has house insurance, or if the property owner provides transport, a short description if they want to include any more information that wasn't already included. There will also be a picture of the space. There will also be a space for asking any questions so you can ask questions to the property owner. And finally, you can like or dislike the post. So if you add a like, you will add one more to the total number of votes. If you add a dislike, it will reduce from the total number of votes 1. So first I open the group's repository that I clone to my PyCharm. And I'll create two directories, one called SRC, which will be all the source code. It will be contained in here, and then I will create one directory which is called the tests, which will contain all the tests for each one of those classes written in the SRC folder. So I'll start by writing the class. So if I create a new file in the SRC folder, let's name it storage space. And yes, we want to add this class to Git. And so we can start writing our storage space module, which will be the class for the storage space post. Let's name our class storage space and start by thinking what we would want to include in the init method. So first of all, we're going to want the name of the property owner that posted the storage space, and that's going to be a string. We also want the surname of the property owner, and that's also going to be a string. We also want the profile picture of the property owner. That's going to be a URL, so it's going to be a string. We'll want the title of the storage space post. That's going to be a string as well. We're going to need the measurements of the storage space. We're going to want a list of width, length, height. So this is going to be type list. We're also going to need the postcode of the storage space. That's going to be a string. We're going to need the weekly price of the storage space. This is set by the property owner. We're going to want this to be a float because we want decimal numbers to be included. And we want to know any extras. So if the storage space is locked, if the house has insurance, or if the property owner provides transport. We're also going to want any extra description that the property owner wants to include if not detailed before. This is also going to be a string. We're also going to want an image of the storage space being advertised, and that's going to be a URL as well, so it's going to be a string. And then we want to initialize the total number of likes. So we'll start by writing all these attributes in the init method's argument, and then setting these arguments as variables in the class, and I will keep the names the same as I put them in the arguments of the class in the init method. When a property owner posts a storage space, not all of these attributes need to be filled in. This is why we will need some default values for some of the attributes in this class. So for example, for the image, we will have a generic profile picture image if the property owner hasn't posted his own profile picture. And attributes with the default need to be the last ones in the argument of the init method. Property owners also don't need to add an extra description, so this will be left blank as a default. And also they don't need to post an image of the storage space, so this will also be left blank if there's no URL provided. So now let's talk about some methods that might be included in the class. Perhaps there will be one method for adding a like to the total number of likes, or there will also be a method for adding a dislike to the total number of likes. There might also be a method for adding a question and one for adding an answer. So if we think about the question and answer methods for the class, we know we will need to import the class for question and the class for answer. But for the purpose of this video, I will only be focusing on the methods of adding likes and dislikes. So for the add like method, we simply need to add 1 to the total number of likes every time this method is run. And for the add unlike, we do the same, except we take away 1 from the total number of likes. So say we now want to test our class by testing the methods of like and unlike. We could do this by first creating an instance of the class, name it space, and let's test if the initial total number of likes is 0. So we print the total number of likes of this space and we see it is 0. Now let's test the method of adding likes. So if we then do space.addLike, it should add 1 to the total number of likes. If we add multiple likes, say 4, then the total number of likes should be 4. Now let's try to do a similar thing with adding unlikes. So if initially our total number of likes is 0, and then we add 1 unlike, the total number of likes will be -1. Finally, let's try to do a mixture of likes and unlikes. So in this case, since there are 2 likes and 2 unlikes, the total number of likes will be 0. But you can see this is not a good method to test, and so what we will be using is unit testing. We start by creating a new Python file under our tests directory, and it's going to be a unit test. We want to make sure to add this one to our GitHub repository as well. And now we see the template for the unit testing. We first want to import storage space class that we're doing the unit test for. We want to test that the initial number of total likes is 0. We also want to test that the total number of likes is 1 after 1 like has been added, -1 after 1 unlike has been added, and we want to test multiple likes and unlikes being added. Let's name this unit test storage space test and define the first test as test likes is 0. For this test, we start by creating an instance of the class. And then we test if the total number of likes of this space is 0 initially. If we run the test, we see that this test has passed. We name the rest of the tests test add like, test add unlike, and test multiple like unlike. And we will need to create instances of the space for each one of these tests. For the add like test, let's add a like. For the add unlike test, let's add 1 unlike, let's add 4 likes and 2 unlikes. So by the end, the total number of likes should be 2. In the test add like, we want to make sure that the total number of likes is 1. Then in the add unlike, we want to make sure that it's -1. And finally, in the multiple like unlike, we want to make sure it's 2. And if we run the whole unit test, we can see that all the tests have passed. Now that I've created the initial class and its corresponding unit test, I want to commit this to our repository. I will leave the comment as storage space module creation and commit this change. And finally, I want to push this change to our GitHub repository. So if we go into GitHub, we can now see that the tests and SRC folders have been added to our repository. Finally, we can see our database in SQLite form, and we can see the different tables, like the storage space table, which has its corresponding columns. And we can create a visual representation of this, and again, we can see our storage space table. We can commit this SQLite form, and then we can also push this into our GitHub repository. And we can see our SQLite is now also available on our repository on GitHub.